Welcome, one and all, to Adam is Chase podcast. Welcome back on this very cloudy, very rainy Friday afternoon. How's everything? What's going on with y'all? Hope y'all are staying safe, staying warm. Did y'all catch the nominations? Because I'm not gonna lie, it's a pretty good year of films that have come out this year, and I think for the first time in a long time that there hasn't really been any snubs that are very questionable. We will address some of it because I did read a Rolling Stones article that I stumbled upon, I think on Film Twitter. It was Film Twitter last night. Excuse me. And I didn't quite realize that no matter what you do in any publication whatsoever, there's always going to be just some asshole who's just going to have a problem with certain nominations. And I've also looked at the because I was curious, Letterboxd's top 50, and I thought that was interesting for the year, and it actually gets updated weekly. So I know a lot of these things will probably change, but for the most part, a lot of the films that are on this list have kind of remained the same. So first and foremost, I watched a little bit of Tarantino and Roger Avary on Joe Rogan's podcast. You see, I only watch Joe Rogan when he has interesting guests. I'm not into the bro culture of just watching Rogan all the fucking time. It's just whenever he has interesting guests, I would be watching it. And Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avary has a podcast called Video Archives Podcast, and I've listened to a few episodes. I got to be honest, I don't really listen to a lot of it. But I mean, I don't really listen to many podcasts anymore. I mean, not really. It's just been mostly news stuff and news podcasts and some comedy podcasts, but not really all that much. But there's one clip that I thought was very interesting on why Quentin Tarantino thinks movies are better than TV shows. And we'll watch the clip, and it's 9 minutes long, but I don't think we're gonna go that long. That would be insane. So let's just get the reaction content started, baby.
I love that.
Let me give you another example of everyone talks about how great television is now, and it's pretty good. I got to say, it's pretty good, but it's still television to me. And what's the difference between television and a good movie? Because a lot of the TV now has the patina of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
All right, they're using cinematic language, all right, to get you caught up in it, and obviously I'm talking about good shows. We're talking about shows that you're
Ozark.
We're talking shows that you're compelled to watch.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Fucking Ozark. He it's like when you're in school and you just shout shit before they need to address anything. Rogan does that a few times, which kind of pisses me off, where he has to say something in order to just get ahead of oh, you want to talk about great shows? Well, Ozark is a great show. Not saying that it isn't, although the final season is left to be desired. But sorry, Quentin, you have a point. Please continue.
And so, okay, I'll use an example of a show. I'll use Yellowstone. I didn't really get around to watching Yellowstone the first 3 years or so, and then I watched like the first season. I go, wow, this is fucking great. I've always been a big Kevin Costner fan. He's fucking wonderful in this. All right, and I got really caught up in the show and everything, and all of a sudden I'm having a good time, and I've got a couple seasons I haven't seen, so I'm watching it, and in the first season, I'm kind of talking about, oh, this is like a movie. This is like a big movie. It's like a big movie. And the guy who writes that is a good writer. There's good, like, punchy monologues and stuff. So then I end up watching, like, 3 seasons of it. And then I even watched that 1883. Was, oh, this is like a good Western show. I like Westerns. But then, after I've watched, like, 2 or 3 seasons or 1 season of 1883, look, while I'm watching it, I am compelled. I'm caught up in it. But at the end of the day, it's all just a soap opera. They've introduced you to a bunch of characters. You actually kind of know all their backstories. You know everybody's connection with everybody else. And, they spend some time selling that out. And then everything else, is just the compellingness of the soap opera.
Right.
Of what's happening to
and
this
what's
character.
different between that and a film?
Well, I'll tell you. Because the thing is, if you watch Edge of Night Monday through Friday, you get caught up in the dramas of the family and everything.
Right.
But you don't remember it 5 years from now. You're caught up into the minutia of it at the moment. Mm-hmm. All right. So the difference between is I'll see a good Western movie and I'll remember it for the rest of my life. I'll remember the story. I'll remember this scene or that scene, and it built to an emotional climax of some degree. And the story is good. It's not just about the interpersonal relationships. The story is good itself, but there's a payoff to it. But there's not a payoff on this stuff. It's just more interconnectional drama. And while I'm watching it, that's good enough. But when it's over, I couldn't tell you. I can remember who the bad guy was in the first season of Yellowstone because it was Danny Houston. I remember him in it, but I don't remember any of the details of it, and I don't remember any of the bad guys for season 2 or season 3.
I mean, he's right. I've said this. I said this for so long. I have said this for years at this point. I don't necessarily think that there are necessarily bad shows. I just think that, like, when it comes to the difference between movies and shows, they're, as much as like people say that they are similar, and they are in many ways, it's serialized. These are shows that gets you caught up in the moment. And the greatest thing about shows is the accessibility because everybody has Netflix, right? So, like, the accessibility of watching, like, a show like Stranger Things, people will talk about it. And if it comes out week to week, regardless of what show it is, like Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad or even Homeland, which Quentin talks about Homeland, but I don't want to. It's already so long that we've already kind of ran through this clip, because he reiterates the same point, and that. When you have a show like Breaking Bad or Homeland, it's good narratively, especially in its first season, because it feels like you are watching a full-length movie, but like chopped up in so many episodes. And I know that a lot of shows have done that, but the problem with a lot of those other shows is that they don't necessarily take in all of what makes a great show actually great. And instead, they just rely on characters to essentially drive that show. And for the most part, like, shows like that usually are good, right? But that's soap operas. Those are literally soap operas. And I never really connected that until Tarantino said it. Which is I think that's a fair assessment of it all, right? Is because, like, with soap operas, and I have nothing against soap operas. I personally love soap operas. I like getting into the, details and the crevices of all of these intricate relationships. that go on in these shows and like how these characters are made and how they react to the world and react to each other. I think that's what makes it like that's a huge part of what makes a great show, right? The other part of it is that the masterful craft of filmmaking, and I mean movies, right? When it comes to filmmaking, every like the characters and the plot and all like that's like a huge like overarching thing, right? But then you got cinematography, you got sound, you got music, you got costume, you got hair and makeup, you got production design, you got the art department. You have all of these things that makes for what participates in the story and makes the story enhanced or believable or anything that can give you a true honest reaction and a feel and the atmosphere of what the filmmakers are trying to convey. And I don't mean like, oh, the director and what. I mean, yeah, they're a big part. The directors are always the biggest part of any film. But the just as important parts, in my opinion, are the other filmmakers on each department, right? So when you have all of these departments and all these things kind of like meshing together to make something truly unique and special, it will leave way more of a mark on you than it would for any TV show. Truly. Because that's not to say that like, oh, the Game of Thrones doesn't have good production design. They of course have great production design, despite the fact that, yeah, a lot of those shows and Disney shows, shoot on volume, they shoot on sound stages, they, there's CGI, so much of it and whatnot. That doesn't take away from those shows, right? But for me, I agree with Quentin on the fact that movies are better because it leaves that mark, for as long as you can remember the films. But like, if you tell me, oh, what was the plot to, Dexter season 2, I'm gonna be like, I don't fucking know, the Trinity Killer, and I don't even know if that's correct. You know what I mean? It's like the idea of having a show that leaves a mark on you doesn't mean that it doesn't for a lot of people. I'm sure it does for a lot of people, and people even still recite Breaking Bad to this day. Like what is my name? When I knock, you I am here, or whatever. Whatever. Like, it is a very quotable show, but again, it's like movies leave such a mark, and that's the thing too, right? Is like those shows like Breaking Bad or Mad Men or even Dexter, I've only watched those shows once. I'm sure if I watch it again, I'll be like, oh, this is amazing, it's great, because it's like when you have like a fantastic meal, you remember that, right? But when you have a buffet that you can keep going back to, yeah, it's going to be good because you're going to go back to that fucking buffet. You're going to be like, okay, that was delicious. Let's grab another plate. Okay, that was also good. Let's grab another plate. Oh, and you know what? Let's grab like a couple plates to go. Like that's the kind of shit that I'm like, I'm not necessarily against, but I'm not at all for, because long story short, movies take a long time to craft. Shows probably do as well. In fact, probably shows like I would imagine like takes even longer, right? And we're gonna talk about nomination season, award season shit. Shogun is a fantastic show that sort of, I mean, it was a show previously, I think in the 80s or something, but this show, with how carefully crafted it is between the set design to the choreographed with like swords and shit like that. That is a fantastic show that lives, eats, and breathes by itself because it's just only that one season. So I feel like that would leave a bigger mark for me than a show like Homeland would, because I feel like Homeland, the first season, was fucking fantastic. It's so fantastic. And for those of you who have seen this clip, I'm sure like you will see Quentin talk about that. But that's the point, right? Is that like when you have a soap opera, it's very much like, you know, in its own kind of confined bubble. And that's as far as the show can go. So and there's like so many fucking characters that go in and out, or characters that have really big arcs that you won't necessarily remember the minutia of all of these, you know, quirks of every single character, because there's like literally dozens of characters in all of these shows. And I'm sure Yellowstone is no exception to that. Despite I never seen the show, I can't really give a whole ass opinion on it, but I can tell you that a show like that, with its cavalcade of characters, you know, including Kevin Costner and all that, like, you will remember the parts for what they are rather than remember them for how much of a mark they leave on you. So you could talk about it with friends, you could talk about it with so many people, and, you know, have this show kind of be that thing. And right now, like, I was going to talk about, like, I watched the newest episode of Skeleton Crew, and it's fine. It's fine, but like, there's really not much to discuss because it's just, you know, it's just, we see Jude Law taking the kids back to a ship to go and find, you know, another person who is like kind of the arbiter of the star maps, who is just the one who has all the information and shit like that to get the kids back home. So that's fine. And there was like some good, you know, interaction in that episode, but it's not necessarily like something that I'm like, you know, like, oh, I can talk about this show for fucking years. That's not how it works. Shows live in their own world, rightfully so, as what a good show is supposed to be, right? Let's just take Star Wars, right? We're already on the topic of Star Wars. So Skeleton Crew is one, right? The Acolyte, or you know what? Yeah, let's do The Acolyte. The Acolyte is also another show that has a cavalcade of characters, but the thing is, though, is that, like, the show didn't even know what the fuck it was trying to be. Like, it set itself up to be a whole ass show with, like, multiple seasons and whatnot, but, like, when it comes to the franchise of Star Wars, that's where the magic really happens, is because of those films. The films, the shows and the video games and the books are all derivatives of the cinematic, you know, chronological films that George Lucas has set out to make, right? If George Lucas back in the 70s thought, you know what, I want to make Star Wars as a TV show, which he did have that idea, but that was like far after Return of the Jedi. Star Wars would not be the same. It just wouldn't. Because in the 70s, you didn't really have like shows that are like that, right? Not like what it is today. You know, cinematic storytelling, right? Like what Quentin said. But for the most part, you have a movie that is 2 hours long, and you can watch it from beginning to end, and you know exactly what the characters' wants and needs are. You know who Han Solo is. You know who Princess Leia is. You know who Vader is. You know who Luke Skywalker is. You know all these characters in a span of 2 hours to digest and consider and listen to, you know, what these characters have to say and how they interact in this world and to each other, right? That's what makes it that's just one part of it, right? And then, like I said, you got all the other departments, you know, between, you know, lighting to hair and makeup to art department, right? So that being said, it still applies to shows, especially nowadays. Like shows nowadays really play into that and play into it well, very, very well. But I feel like in my heart, that movies kind of still remain supreme is because you only have that finite amount of time, and whatever you do in that finite amount of time, you have to make the character snappy. You have to make the story go. You have to keep moving and keep chugging along so that you make it interesting enough so that maybe there could be a second viewing. There could be a third viewing. There could be a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, so on and so forth, right? Shows are an investment. It is an investment. It's not like you can you know watch ER from the very beginning with George Clooney. You know, you can't watch that and then watch all of the ER episodes up until this point, or Law and Order, right? From all the episodes up until this point, right? Well, one, there's not enough time in the world to do that, and they're still pumping out more of those episodes of those shows. But again, I have to stress this, that shows are meant to be a serialized, soap operatic, you know, medium of storytelling, that you have a wide breadth of diving deep into any of these characters and any of these story threads, which is why you can get away with, a perfect example of this is why you can get away with more flashbacks in a show than you could with a film. Because with the film, it's not to say that like you can't have flashbacks. I mean, like a lot of movies do. But the fact of that is that if you have these flashbacks, the flashbacks has to connect through the overall thread of the story. It has to make sense. It has to have some sort of, you know, it's like when you kick a soccer ball and then after a while it slows down and then it stops. Shows can allow that soccer ball to stop. Whereas for movies, you have to keep that ball rolling. You cannot stop. You just have to keep going. If you have questions about that character, maybe that'll be answered. Maybe it won't. It doesn't matter, because the point is that the plot is a plot, and these characters are going to be the vehicles to drive that plot. Usually. Not all the time, but usually, right? So with film, the limitations is what gives you the most creative freedom. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it feels like it makes sense in my head. I think that the creative freedom is more wide with film than there is with a show, because with the show you have to keep it interesting. You have to keep it moving. You know, like a movie, but different than a movie. You can rely on those characters to make that story interesting, you know, and there is great cinematic, you know, storytelling within that, you know, and people who really give a shit about like its production design and its process of it all, like that is all encompassing on those shows. But not many shows really do that. And when shows do that, it's usually like a 1-season thing or like a 2-season thing. And then it becomes like a serialized thing, like a soap opera thing. So that's why I feel like movies, for me, are way more enjoyable, partially because I don't have the time. But the majority of it is that you see the whole world in a span of 2 hours or less than 2 hours. And you will walk away from it thinking about that thing, because there is a beginning, middle, and an end, and that's it. Whereas, like I said, you take a show like The Acolyte, there's a beginning, there's kind of a middle, but there's absolutely no end. Like, no end. It kind of just drops off. That's it, right? Whereas you get a show like Shogun, right? Shogun has a beginning, middle, and an end. So you know not how it's going to end, but you know there's going to be an end. It's not like we're going to, set ourselves up for a season 2. There's no setup at the end of Shogun for a season 2, and I love that. I love that. Even though there are so many people who are like, are there going to be a season 2? It's like, how? How? Like a miniseries is supposed to be a miniseries. And most of the time, like, they already said their fucking piece. They already said what they needed to fucking say. It's like that. I think back to that press interview with director of Joker, Hangover, Todd Phillips, right? Todd Phillips said in an interview somewhere, or a promo interview for Joker, that like, is there going to be like a sequel to this? And Todd had no intention of it. He's like, I mean, I don't know how. This is just a film. This is just what the film is. And this is a story of Arthur Fleck, Joker. This is just what I wanted. This is what I wanted to make. Now, he still made a sequel to it, and there is an end, but there was technically an end in the first one. But because by popularity and, Warner Brothers backed up the fucking Brinks truck to Todd Phillips' home and just dumped a bunch of cash and go, please make another movie, he did, and for better or for worse, there is an end to it, despite the fact that it did drastically worse than, what the first film could at all achieve. So I just think about that and I just go, people just, it's almost like people cannot just take the world for what it is and know that that's the world from beginning to end, and we leave it off of that, right? That's it. That's all we're going to do, and this is the fucking story. But for the most part, people are just like, no, give me more. I need more of this. And when it comes to certain shows, yeah, I'm definitely the same way. But I know the limitations of what a show can really achieve, as opposed to what a film can achieve. So when sequels kind of come up into the equation, it's a make it or break it kind of thing for that world, right? Because with certain sequels, it just can completely unwind and contradict the previous film tenfold. So therefore, it's basically a franchise that you just kind of took it and leave it, and you're like, okay, well, I guess that's it. We're just gonna move on, essentially. And that's why I prefer films way more so. Because you only have that time and that's it. And if you can tell your story in that time, great. If you can't, maybe there's a chance of a sequel, but don't guarantee on it. Don't bet don't bet all the marbles on it. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's about it for my rant of movies versus TV. But I'm curious what other people think, because I know a lot of people who prefer shows. Even people I work with in the film industry prefer shows. They just prefer to watch a show. They're just like, yeah, no, I'd rather have a weekly, or I can watch 2 episodes at a time of a show that I'm really enjoying, which is great. I think that's wonderful, but and that's why with this podcast, I kind of I want to move away from TV and really invest my time with films, because sure, it's content, right? It's like I can talk about this for however fucking long, but the point of it all, the impetus of it all, is that I want to take in as any film that I watch as this is what I'm glued to. This is what I'm watching, and I know there's going to be an end, and therefore I can have my complete and utter, evaluation of it. Not really evaluation, like thought process and explanation and, just conversating about these films, which is why I do this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. You know what I mean? I can't I've done it before, and a lot of my friends, like every time I call anybody up or, I chat with somebody, I can only take the conversation for so long, right? Before I'm completely boring them to death or, they want to talk about other shit. But this is the shit that I want to talk about, from top to fucking bottom. And that's fucking movies, dude. I live, eat, and breathe this shit. This is my life. So with that being said, let's move on. Let's move on to nominations. It's award season, ladies and gentlemen. So we are going to look at Golden Globes nominations and Critics' Choice, which looking at all this, I don't think there's really anything that stands out. But who fucking knows? I could be absolutely wrong. So let's just get into it, shall we? So, Golden Globes 2024 nominations for Best Motion Picture: The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Nickel Boys, September 5th. I will say I will get through a lot of the films that I haven't seen. At least yet. But for the most part, I gotta say, a lot of these nominations are kind of like, oh yeah, that's a no-brainer. But also to remind y'all, when nominations, usually Golden Globes come before the Oscars and stuff, but a good way to kind of predict what Oscars are gonna kind of look like, this is the best way of kind of looking at it, right? This is the best way of seeing what could possibly be in the Oscars. That goes the same thing for the Critics' Choice as well. But whenever you see shit that's nominated here, there could be a very good chance that it could be in the Oscars. But of course, movies are still coming out. And the Oscars sometimes won't even do anything that's on the list, but then will add, 3 more movies that, that weren't even part of the nominations at all in the previous award shows, right? So it's an interesting part. So I think that's very interesting that Dune Part 2 is back into, the nomination contention, especially being nominated for Best Motion Picture. I think that's great. I think Dune Part 2 is phenomenal, and I'm going to watch it again because my movie theater experience was not good, but you'll see that. You'll see that in a future episode. But yeah, so Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy. Now, this category, I always take it or leave it because whenever it comes to the idea of what makes a musical or a comedy, whoever runs this, whoever the honorees are or the judges or whatever the fuck, that run the Golden Globes, you kind of have to take it or leave it because a lot of these nominations are just so fucking ass backwards, in my opinion. And I'll get to that. Okay, so Anora, right? Anora, I haven't seen yet, but I have never seen anybody call Anora a comedy. And Challengers, sure, I can see it kind of being but it's like it's way more serious than like treating it as like a musical or a comedy, right? Amelia Perez, which y'all are gonna see a future episode on my review of not review, sorry, discussion of Amelia Perez, makes sense because Amelia Perez is a musical, right? And there's some comedic elements to it. It's really fucking dark and serious though. So again, it's like you have to fucking take it or leave it. A Real Pain, which is a Jesse Eisenberg film with Kieran Culkin. That makes sense. It's like kind of like a a slice of life kind of film, right? The Substance. Now, sure. Right? There are some funny moments in The Substance, but that's not because it is trying to be comedic. The substance, like the scenes in The Substance that make you laugh out loud isn't inherently what's supposed to make you laugh out loud. I mean, if anything, The Substance is almost a cautionary tale. So to call that a musical or a comedy is just fucking hilarious to me. Now, to be fair, what do you categorize a Substance as? I mean, well, it's a body horror, but it's more than that as well, right? It's it's way more. It has things to do inside the film industry and how toxic it is, and your own value as you see yourself, and what that does to you when you are in stardom for so long, and then that kind of star just sort of slowly fades away. And what do you do about that? So sure, it's hard to categorize a Substance, but again, it's like another hilarious thing of like, why would you categorize that as musical or comedy? That's fucking silly, bro. So anyways, moving on. Wicked, sure. I haven't seen it yet. I just haven't had the time to see it, and quite frankly, nothing against any of the filmmakers. It's just I don't know if I want to sit my ass down in a movie theater to watch that. I feel like that's like a good home viewing film, which is fun because I gotta say this. Like I know we're going on tangents here, but like the thing that I hate the most that is like on film Twitter or discussion boards or even conversations in real life when it comes to home viewing versus theater experiences, lots of cinephiles, lots of people, especially on film Twitter, think that like movie theater should always, you should always strive to go to the movie theater. And like so many times, even as a filmmaker, so many times there'll be people who tell me like, you don't go to the movie theaters at all. And it's not that I hate the movie theaters. It's just the last several times that I've been to the movie theater, I have fundamentally and arguably fucking regretted it because of the viewing experience or the whole production of just like, oh God, I got to take some time off, or like, oh, I get off work at this time. Maybe after work, I will, go catch a movie. It's not like when I was working retail, it was a lot easier. But when you're working in the film industry, you're working 12, 13, 14, 15 hours a day. You just don't have that time. And even if I do have that time, I'm watching the backlogs of the shit that I've already missed. So I would like pop open, Netflix or Amazon or anything and then see like, oh shit, I meant to watch this. I meant to watch that. I meant to watch this, whatever the fuck. And when it comes to the theaters, I mean, I've only seen like a handful of movies this year. I think it was a little bit more last year, but it's only been a handful this year. And in those handful of times, I would say like 80% of the time, the experience has just not been that great, and it could be a number of different things, right? I go to the Alamo Draft House. It's kind of like I know there's independent cinemas here, but like that's like way farther inside the city where there's like no parking at all, or you park across the street to like parking structures that you're going to pay $30 for. So I'm not going to pay, close to $50 just to watch a movie. Like that's just insane. I'm not doing that. So, yeah, I think that like when it comes to at home viewing, it doesn't take away the magic of watching that movie. Like the communal experience is a great, fantastic part of this, right? But that communal experience is long and fucking gone. I'm sorry. It's very long and gone. Like the last time I had a viewing experience that was like monumental was Endgame. That was the last time. That was literally the last time. I remember vividly that theater experience was fucking magical, Yeah, it was just like every single scene. There was like laughter, there was applause, and even in the third act with fucking Captain America holding Thor's hammer saying Avengers Assemble, just like getting up. Like I saw people in the audience fucking got up, like jumped out of their fucking seats and just started fucking applauding and shit. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of shit that I look forward to in so many factors, and I just don't see that anymore, especially with like bigger movies and whatnot, So yeah, I mean that's as far as I got for that. So moving on, motion picture animated, Flow, heard nothing but great things about. Inside Out 2, very adorable. Memoir of a Snail, haven't seen that. Moana 2, haven't seen that, and I have no reason to see it. Moana 1 is goated. I didn't need a second one. Whatever, right? I don't need to see that. Wallace and Gromit, I mean, come on. Wallace and Gromit is always a classic. I haven't seen this one. I grew up watching Wallace and Gromit. And I think it was just probably better at that time when I watched it as a child. And The Wild Robot, a great animated movie if you want to cry continuously. So cinematic and box office achievement. Okay. So this is an interesting category. It's kind of a relatively new category, I feel like. And I'm not sure if the Oscars have added this category or not, of like, box office achievements and stuff. But I always felt like this is an interesting, like, it's kind of an interesting category because it's not like you're celebrating the film, whoever won with the biggest like box office achievement or whatever. But like, I don't know. I just don't feel like this category is necessary. Like I don't feel that this category has anything to do with the craftsmanship of each of these nominations. That's why you have the best actor category, you have the best director category, you have the best production design category, cinematographer category, where they and that's the other part too that pisses me off with the Oscars, is that they kind of just streamline those categories. like completely. And I know it's about time. It's a whole production. They don't want to have a 3-4 hour fucking, you know, award show. I get it, but you're not even giving the flowers to the people who are like, you know, the grunt workers, essentially, like the ones who are making that fucking piece of art spring to life, you know? And we just completely kind of streamline that, which I think is bullshit, but, you know, whatever, right? Alien Romulus, part of the category for cinematic and box office achievement. I don't know how much Alien Romulus made, but I like the movie. I think it's a fun ride. It's definitely a fun ride for Romulus. It's a great little addition to the Alien universe, and of course it's Fede Alvarez. So you know how Fede is with Evil Dead, Don't Breathe. Those films are just frenetic and so fucking, fast paced. Like Alien Romulus was like the first movie that I've seen of Fede Alvarez that was like, in the beginning, it was like kind of slow, but not in a bad way at all. Like it was just establishing its characters and Andy and, all that, like, and Wayland Yutani. Like that's great. I think that's like, fantastic. And then like once the 15-minute mark hits, that's when shit just goes balls to the fucking wall. And I personally really enjoyed Alien Romulus. Is it the best Alien film in the franchise? I think Aliens by Jim Cameron is still the fucking best. I just Aliens is like, Alien is a classic. It's a certified fucking classic for sure. In the same way that I feel like Halloween is a classic, or Texas Chainsaw is a classic. Like those films just by itself alone are worth the price of admission for sure. But Aliens just rocked my goddamn world. It's a great fucking movie. Beetlejuice. I gotta admit something here. I never wanted to have. I wouldn't wish my worst enemies the movie experience and the film itself to make them watch this film and the experience that I fucking had. Like Beetlejuice is a film that I don't necessarily think that like a lot of people ask for, much less like there was a huge demand for a second Beetlejuice film. And if there were to be a huge demand for a second Beetlejuice film, I mean, Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian is the thing that comes to mind. And I think that would have been a hilarious fucking crazy ass film. But, that's neither here nor there. And I just think that like Michael Keaton, as much as I think Michael Keaton is one of the best actors, one of the best thespians, of our time, he was electric in that film. And he was only in it like for half of the fucking movie. Less than half the movie, it feels like. And that character kind of still remains iconic to this day. They kind of did the same shit with Beetlejuice. And I will say this. The nostalgia hit of this film is great. Until you get halfway through Act 2. Like going into the under city and like, with the train, the Soul Train, it's just like everything up to that point was like, okay, this is fun. I'm having fun. And then it just got to that point and I'm just like, oh boy. So whatever. I'm not saying it's a horrible film. it's just I appreciated that Tim Burton went back to, early stop motion stuff that looks pretty decent, and the art direction of it all is very, very good. I will give it that. But in terms of the substance in the movie and how it plays out and all that, it just feels very corporate inspired, and it really rubbed me the wrong way. So that's just my opinion. Deadpool Wolverine, it's just fun. It's just a fun comic book movie. It was like rounding it out for the entire Deadpool trilogy. I never really took the Deadpool films, with like the closest microscope ever, because Deadpool was never one of those comic books that I was like really clamoring for. I was very aware of Deadpool. I'm very aware of like the fourth wall breaking, the fourth wall breaking and all that. Like, it was a lot in this film. I'll say that. It was like a lot. Whereas like Deadpool 2 and Deadpool 1, like there is like kind of like a substantive, like, story structure to it. And Deadpool Wolverine kind of has that, but like I didn't watch that for that. I didn't watch it because of the story, y'all. I watched it because I want to see Deadpool back and to see fucking Hugh Jackman, okay, come back and don the fucking Wolverine suit for the last time, but in a comic book accurate way, which, sure, is not all that, fucking accurate. Who cares? It doesn't matter. The point is that it's still a fun experience, like a lot. And I watched it with film nerds, who also are comic book fans, and they had a good time watching it, and I had a good time watching it, and of course the cameos were fantastic, bringing back like all the Fox characters from the other Marvel Cinematic Universe from way back when, was awesome. It was like one after another was just like great. Gambit was an interesting choice. I'll say that. It's nice to see Gambit and fully formed and immortalized by Channing Tatum, who has been at the rallying call to be Gambit for his own film that never really made. Gladiator 2, haven't seen it. Inside Out 2 is, of course, is great. I have a feeling this might win just because it's like it made a ton of money. It made a shit ton of money. So I have a feeling that this might actually take it home. Twisters is just fun. I didn't know that Twisters actually like had like a major box office achievement. I think I just kind of like push that aside. I just think it's a fun movie. Yeah, I just thought it was fun. Wicked, haven't seen, but it is doing good. It's doing very well in the box office. I do know that. And same with The Wild Robot. So, very interesting choices, very interesting finds. Yeah. I think, you know what? We are kind of going a little bit over time, and I don't want to spend like a ton of hours on it. We'll probably continue this in another episode. To just like kind of continue the convo of award season stuff. But we're broaching an hour, and I gotta go, y'all. I got another episode to record. And yeah, that's about it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a good time. Do whatever you got to do to get through to the holidays. I know the holidays is stressful. The holidays is tough. you know, which is why for my favorite sponsor, DoorDash is sponsoring this episode. Now, can you imagine? That'd be crazy. Fucking sponsoring a channel with like 15 subscribers. No, I hope y'all are doing good. You're staying warm in this holiday season. And listen, if you gotta smoke a little, you gotta drink a little in order to get through the holidays. Fucking do it, y'all, because y'all only live once, and family is where it's at. And sometimes you just need that little extra push, to deal with all the craziness of family. So. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.